aspects of sexuality. Most research studies focus on gender, attractiveness, body size, and age, and they measure indicators such as first impressions, expectation of performance, perception of performance, and social interaction. These studies generally conclude that when comparing individuals of equal competence, for men, the perception is that taller men will do better than short, a full head of hair will outperform balding, handsome or virile will beat out plain or older. For women, the results are comparable. The perception is that attractive performs better than plain, slim or shapely scores higher than overweight, younger is expected to be superior to older. These observations about physical sexuality may seem obvious, but they lead to a conclusion that is very significant. Obviously, not all people who succeed are tall and virile or attractive and shapely. It is also a fact that the success of those who are short, balding, plump, or plain isn't always due to superior skill or luck. Clearly, there is another kind of attractiveness that often supersedes physical appeal. This other kind of attractiveness is connected to human sexuality, but it is not what would usually be referred to as sexy. People who have this quality are often said to have chemistry, personality, charm, or appeal. Hill called this kind of attraction personal magnetism. Today, the more common term is charisma. This is the end of the editor's comments. When employing salespeople, a good sales manager looks for personal magnetism or charisma as the first requirement. People who lack this kind of sexual energy will never become enthusiastic, nor inspire others with enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is one of the most important requisites in salesmanship, no matter what you're selling. The public speaker, preacher, lawyer, or salesperson who is lacking in charisma is a flop as far as being able to influence others is concerned. That, plus the fact that most people are influenced through an appeal to their emotions, should easily convince you of the importance of charisma as a part of the salesperson's ability. Master salespeople attain mastery in selling because they either consciously or unconsciously transmute charisma, sexual energy, into sales enthusiasm. That statement explains the actual, practical meaning of sexual transmutation. The meaning of the word transmute is, in simple language, the changing or transferring of one element or form of energy into another. The transmutation of sexual energy means switching the mind from thoughts of physical expression to thoughts of some other nature. Salespeople who know how to turn on charisma have acquired the art of sexual transmutation, whether they know it or not. The majority of salespeople who transmute their sexual energy do so without being aware of what they are doing or how they are doing it. You can cultivate and develop this quality in your dealings with others. Through cultivation and understanding, this vital motivating force may be drawn upon and used to great advantage in relationships between people. This energy may be communicated to others in the following ways. The handshake. The touch of the hand indicates instantly the presence of charisma or the lack of it. The tone of voice. Charisma, or sexual energy, is the factor with which the voice may be colored or made musical and charming. Posture and carriage of the body. People with charisma move briskly and with grace and ease. The vibrations of thought. People with charisma project sexuality through their personality in a way that influences those around them. Clothing and style. People who are charismatic are usually very careful about their personal appearance. They usually select clothing of a style becoming to their personality, physique, complexion, etc. Editor's comments. Having established a link between sexuality and success in the form of charisma, in the following section, Napoleon Hill explores how sexuality might also be a motivating factor in success by enhancing creativity. To illustrate the connection, Hill draws upon the biographies of historical figures who exhibited both charisma and exceptional creativity. In the time since Hill conducted his research, many women have risen to positions of power and influence. Their accomplishments have been well documented and are readily available in bookstores and libraries. However, when Hill was assembling his data, the majority of historical biographies available were about successful men. Further, the successful industrialists and political leaders he had personally studied during the previous 30 years were also men. Because of this limitation, Hill does not theorize about the role men might play in motivating the success of women. This issue is addressed in a later editorial comment. This is the end of the editor's comments. Creativity. It seemed quite significant to me when I made the discovery that practically every great leader I had the privilege of analyzing was a man whose achievements were largely inspired by a woman. In most instances, the woman was a wife, of whom the public had heard little or nothing. In a few of the cases I studied, the source of inspiration was the other woman. The pages of history are filled with the records of great men whose achievements may be traced directly to the influence of women who aroused the creative faculties of their minds. Napoleon Bonaparte was one of these. When inspired by his first wife, Josephine, he was irresistible and invincible. When his better judgment or reasoning faculty prompted him to put Josephine aside, he began to decline. His defeat and exile to St. Helena were not far distant. Abraham Lincoln was a notable example of a great leader who achieved his greatness through the discovery and use of his faculty of creative imagination. It is noted in practically every book written about Lincoln that he discovered and began to use this faculty as the result of the love that he experienced when he met Anne Rutledge. This is more than an interesting historical fact. It is of significance in connection with the role sexuality plays in the study of the source of genius. Following is a list of famous men of outstanding achievement: George Washington, Napoleon Bonaparte, William Shakespeare, Abraham Lincoln, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Robert Burns, Thomas Jefferson, Elbert Hubbard, Elbert H. Gary, Woodrow Wilson, John H. Patterson, Andrew Jackson, Enrico Caruso. Wherever there was evidence available in connection with the lives of these men of achievement, it indicated most convincingly that each possessed a highly developed sexual nature. An analysis of the information taken from biographies and historical writings leads to the following conclusions. 1. Those of greatest achievement have a highly developed sexual nature, but have learned the art of transmutation of sexual energy. 2. Those who have accumulated great fortunes and achieved outstanding recognition in literature, art, industry, architecture, and the professions were motivated by the influence of a mate or lover. When driven by these emotions, people become gifted with a superpower for action. If you understand this, you will also understand that sexual transmutation contains the secret of creative ability. Editor's comments. As noted previously, although Hill's analysis focused on men, today there is a wide range of biographies about women who have succeeded in every aspect of life, including business, politics, religion, sports, entertainment, and the arts. Bearing in mind that biographical information is always subjective, the reader can now find ample material from which to draw a conclusion as to whether Hill's theory about sexuality as a motivating force is equally evident in women. Napoleon Hill had to do an in-depth analysis of biographies in searching for indications that the subject's sexuality had a correlation to their success. Today, we just turn on the television, and we're inundated with intimate details about both men and women suggesting that the best and the brightest are apparently also the sexiest. Although scandals aren't usually cited as scientific proof, the exposés of some of the biggest entertainment and sports stars, high-profile CEOs of major companies, numerous politicians, and even a few presidents, all make at least a common-sense case for Hill's theory about the correlation between sexuality and success. This is the end of the editor's comments. Obviously, this does not mean that everyone who is highly sexed is a genius. People attain the status of a genius only when and if they stimulate their minds so that they can draw upon the forces available through the creative faculty of the imagination. Although it is the most important of the stimuli or motivators, the mere possession of sexual energy is not sufficient to produce a genius. The energy must be transmuted from desire for physical contact into some other form of desire and action before it will lift one to the status of a genius. Genius and creative imagination. A definition of genius might be someone who has discovered how to increase the intensity of thought to the point where that person can freely communicate with sources of knowledge not available through the ordinary rate of thought. This definition should prompt some questions in the mind of anyone reading this book. The first question should be, how may one communicate with sources of knowledge that are not available through ordinary thought? The next question should be, are there known sources of knowledge that are available only to geniuses, and if so, what are these sources and exactly how may they be reached? In the following, I will offer methods so that you can experiment and prove to yourself that this is true. By doing so, you will have the answer to both questions. Editor's comment. Humans perceive things through the 5 senses of sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. Another kind of perception, as when you have a feeling about something, was discussed in the chapters on desire, faith, and autosuggestion. This kind of perception is often referred to as the 6th sense, and in the following Hill explores the relationship between sexuality, motivation, creative imagination, and the 6th sense. This is the end of the editor's comment. The reality of a 6th sense has been fairly well established. This 6th sense is creative imagination. The faculty of creative imagination is something the majority of people never use during an entire lifetime, and if they do use it, it usually happens by mere accident. Only a small number of people deliberately use their creative imagination for a specific purpose. Those who do use this faculty voluntarily and with understanding of its functions are geniuses. Creative imagination is the direct link between your finite mind and what I have termed infinite intelligence. All revelation